Thank you for joining us today on Library Adventures Live. We call it LAL for short. My name is Linda, and my job is being a librarian here with Kirklees Libraries. Have you been following our adventures week by week, or is this the first time you've joined us? So far, we've had Fairy Tales Gone Bad, Zombirella. We've had robot sleepovers. We've had an accidental football genius. We've had trips up the Amazon, not to mention drawing llamas and creating manga portraits. If you've missed any of the sessions, you can still catch up on YouTube and Facebook. Visit our website. Let's get the banner up for you to show you the website. There. So if you've missed anything, you can catch up on the website at www.kirkleeslibraries.co.uk. And if you, your parents or your teachers have any questions or any comments or any suggestions about Library Adventures Live, you can email us. And that's our email address, lal@kirklees.gov.uk. And one of our children's reader development team will get back to you. Now, last week, we had Derek Keelty. He joined us from his home city of Belfast. He spoke about his new book, Flintlock Bones, The Sceptre of the Pharaohs. He described it as a pirate adventure, but with a twist. The Sceptre of the Pharaohs is the first of 3 Flintlock Bones adventures, so watch out for them at your local library. Did you know that there are 6 libraries open already, and that lots more are to be opened in the next few weeks? They do reduced hours, so it's best to speak to our people. Best to speak to our library people, and this is their phone number. So it's 01484 414 868. And then you'll get some more information about what to do to take part in our safe browsing. However, whilst libraries have been closed, librarians have been very busy. We've been choosing books for our online ebook collection. Now, this is from Overdrive, and all you need to do is download the Libby app to access ebooks and e-audio. There's even a YouTube video that will show you how to do this, and if you get stuck, just get in touch with us. Now, this week, we're very lucky to have Anthea Simmons. Anthea is author of Share, The Best Baby, and I'm Big Now, which are all really aimed at younger children. But today, Anthea is going to be talking to us about, Anthea is going to be introducing us to a heroine from history called Mary Anning. Mary is the subject of Anthea's new book, Lightning Mary. Lightning Mary is the story of the 19th century fossil finder who defied convention to seek out incredible treasures on Dorset's Jurassic coast. Lightning Mary was the winner of the 2020 STEM Children's Book Prize. And here is the bit where I get to introduce Anthea.
Hi, everybody.
Anthea.
Hi there.
Good morning.
I'm just going to introduce somebody else to you before he goes mad. Hang on, let me catch him.
Now, this is because Anthea lives in Devon with her cat, and he's a polydactyl cat.
Can
So perhaps Anthea, could you tell us why Karamak is so special?
Oh, he's got an extra toe. So he's got like a little hand. And I'm just going to let him out. He's a bit camera shy. Yeah, so he's got sort of like a little hand. He's got extra. So he's got actually 8 claws on the front feet, and some of them are hidden between toes, and we have to cut them because he can't sharpen them. But he looks like a ballerina. He stands like this. So he's very unusual.
In first position.
In first position, exactly. Yes, he's a very unusual cat. It's also known as the Dorset thumb because there are cats all over Dorset who've got these extra digits. It's cat evolution. He can virtually pick things up.
So is that just special to your area?
I think they do exist everywhere else, but there just happen to be a number of cats with that particular genetic mutation. And
I absolutely adore cats because they're so intelligent.
Yeah, he's
Anyway.
super intelligent. Anyway.
Enough about cats. So let's turn to Lightning Mary. There will be questions for. There will be time for answering questions after Anthea's presentation. So please use the chat to send in your questions, and don't forget to tell us your name, your school, your class, and your question, and then we can give a shout out to wherever you are in Kirklees. Now that's my bit finished, and I'm going to hand over to Anthea, who is going to tell us all about the exciting Mary Anning.
Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to start with just a little presentation to tell you some background stuff about Mary. And then we're going to have a look at a few fossils, and then I'll read a little bit from the book, and then it's over to you, because that's the bit I enjoy most, actually, is what you asked me. That's the interesting bit. Right, so I'm now going to try and share my screen. Right, we're nearly ready, and we're going into this one.
Technology, how marvellous.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Yes.
Yep, there we go.
Right. So there's the cover of the book, which I was so thrilled about. A book cover is a really, really important thing, because, as you know, in the days when we used to be allowed into bookshops, there are mountains and mountains of books, and you've got to have something that catches the eye. So I was really pleased when the illustrator first did this cover. He put her with blonde hair, looking very, very pretty, and I said, "That's not Mary. She's a tough little scrapper, and she needs to look like a tough little scrapper." And I think he did a really good job. Right, so let's go on to, hang on, let me get there. So here she is. Now this is the only picture we've got of her. And she doesn't look the most exciting person on the planet, really, does she? She looks quite, well, dour. But what I liked about her, I started reading up about her because one of the bookshops in Lyme said, "Please, could you write something about Mary Anning for the 8 to 12 age group, because there's nothing." And I started reading up about her, and I thought, gosh, this is a really interesting person, because she had a very, very strong character. Now, I must admit, I'm not terribly interested in history or fossils, which is a terrible thing to say. I'm more interested than I was now. But the more I read about her and the more I got to know her, the more I thought, wow, she is quite something. And she lived I used to live just up the road from Lyme Regis. And that building that you can see at the end of the car park is the Lyme Regis Museum, with its tower, with its little rotunda at the top. And that is where her shop used to be. And that building that sticks out, the black bit that sticks out, that's where her shop used to be. There's the Cobb. Some of you may have had the chance to visit, all the way down in Dorset, very famous. And this is the model of the house that she lived in. The story about through the bottom of the building, up the staircase, and the family was in the house for 2 or 3 days before they could be rescued. So flooding was happening even back then. So what was it about her? Oh, right. So the River Lynn burst its banks and took out the staircase, and the family was stuck upstairs, for a few days, unable to get down because the river just carried everything away. Because obviously these were wooden buildings; they weren't very substantial.
Right.
So there are 3 things about Mary. Yeah, no, flooding is not a new thing, but yeah, we'll talk about that another time, because that's a whole different issue. So she had 3 things going against her. First of all, she was poor, and I mean really poor. And she was working class, so she's right at the bottom of the heap in society. And she was a girl at a time, when being a girl was a real disadvantage. And when I do this talk with children in schools, I say, right, we're going to take part in a race. And I pick out a little boy and I say to him, right, you're Lord Eustace Fotheringay, and you live house, and you're incredibly wealthy, and you're taught to shoot and hunt and fish and all the rest of it. And here's your sister Clarissa, and she learns the piano and French. And here's another little girl who's the daughter of a merchant, and she's also learning the piano and French because she wants to marry the Lord one day, and that's what her father plans for her. And then we've got Mary Anning, who's poor and working class. And then I get them to line up, and I say to them, take 2 steps back if you're poor. So Mary Anning takes 2 steps back. And then I say, take 2 steps back if you're working class. She takes another 2 steps back. And then I say, take 10 steps back if you're a girl. And what happens is the girls who are in the front row, who are the lady and the merchant's daughter, they look at me as if to say, why, what? Why do I have to move? And I say, because you're a girl. You're not as important. Boy gets the head start. So I put Mary at the back. And then Mary says, I'm not having this. I'm no matter what. And she goes like an absolute train and goes past them. And that is what sums up Mary's character. She's got everything against her, but she just thinks, do you know what? I'm not putting up with it. It's not happening to me. So she's very, very stubborn and determined. Sorry, I've gone the wrong way. Oops. Let's flick through these. And she's very, very brave, because where she's finding her fossils is very, very dangerous. And I also asked children, you know, would your parents let you out to go and pick up fossils aged 8, 9, 10 in this landscape? And lots of them say, yeah, my parents would. And I say, no. You're far too precious. People do get killed. A fossil hunter was killed in Lyme Regis 3 years ago. And some of you may have seen the pictures of the big fall at West Bay, which unfortunately killed somebody. These are very unstable rocks. And after long periods of dry weather and then rain, they just slide. Just great chunks slide down. But that's the beauty of them, of course, because all the treasures are in those great bits that slide down off the hill. And that's what Mary knew, that after a storm, you were going to find some of your best finds ever. But yeah, very dangerous. And here's got a little video here of, these are major works that have been done to stabilize the cliffs. But where the major fossils are found, on that beach under Black Ven, as it's known, those bits are still, you can see that bits of the hill have slid down. And then it goes all the way around to Charmouth, where there's a fossil centre and people can find ammonites. It's meant to be really easy to find an ammonite. I went and had a long look and I found a tiny fragment of something in a rock. Excited about it. My son laughed at me. We went into the fossil place and they said, yes, it is the tiniest bit of an old mollusk. But so bit of a failure. Of course, this is the sort of thing that she was looking for, because this is the sort of thing that she could sell to people who were visiting Lyme Regis. It was the beginning of tourism, really. And people from London, grand people, would arrive in their carriages, and they weren't going around buying postcards or sticks of rock. They wanted to take something back as a souvenir. And she would show them things like this fossil, this ammonite. And she would say to them, this is a snake stone. It's a snake that's been frozen in time. And if you hold it in your hand and it warms up, it might come alive and wriggle out through your fingers. And the ladies would be going, oh, that's so exciting. I'm going to show my friends, how much is it? And she would say, well, it's a shilling to you, or it's a guinea, or it's a whatever she thought she could get out of them. And she also told them stories that if you had a snake stone in your possession, if you were bitten by a snake, that you wouldn't die from the poison, which of course was absolute rubbish. And there's a story about a sheep farmer who'd been up tending his sheep, been bitten by an adder, and he was found thoroughly dead, I'm afraid, clutching his snake stone in his hand. And guess what? It didn't save him. So, but it was a nice story, and that's what she'd do. She'd tell all sorts of stories about these items. And this is in the museum at Lyme Regis, which is really lovely. If you ever get the chance to visit it, do, because as you can imagine, there's a whole bit dedicated to her. But imagine digging up something like this. I mean, this has got the front of its jaw missing. It's got a huge long bit. There's a better picture coming up. And then I asked people, why do you think these reptiles had this huge eye that could rotate up, down, sideways? And that's because that made it much easier to find prey, and also to be ready in case something bigger was going to come up and munch you. But they had this huge eye socket that could rotate all over the place, up, down, sideways. And here is a skull of an ichthyosaur. Absolutely amazing, isn't it? Imagine if you'd just been finding ammonites, even quite big ones, and then suddenly you come across this. And this is a representation of what they thought that creature looked like at the time. And this is a modern day representation. And you can see it's all nice jolly mayhem of carnage and creatures eating each other, all very exciting. And I say to children in Lyme Regis, would you go in the water if these creatures were in the sea? And all the boys go, yeah, I definitely would. And all the girls go, I don't think so. And then I say to them, yeah, I can just imagine you all swimming there with one of these creatures swimming up to you. You'd be out like a shot. And this is her little dog. She had a little dog called Trey, and she trained him to. She didn't go with her for some reason, or she just found something and then she found something else. Very hard. I don't know if you've ever done. If you ever lost anything on the beach, it's incredibly hard to find where you left it. Everything looks the same. You might think even finding your family when you've been in the sea is hard enough if there's a big crowd. So sometimes she would think, oh gosh, where did I leave that? I found that the other day. What did I do with it? Too heavy to lug it up the beach. So she trained the dog to sit by the fossil and guard it. And then he acted as a marker. But the really, really sad thing was that one day he was sitting devotedly by one of these fossils, just watching it. I'm not going to move. Good boy. She was standing a few feet away from him, and suddenly an unexpected landslide happened. And usually you get a little bit of warning, a bit of a rumble. It came cascading down the hill, and he was buried and killed. And I always think that must have been such a body blow to her. She was the dog was her best friend, really, and it must have been absolutely devastating. I mean, if anything happened to Karamak, I'd be so upset. I'd be crying for weeks. So I think it must have been very, very hard for her. Anyway, there's a little model of him as if he was guarding a fossil. And this is her great friend, Henry de la Beche. We've got no pictures of him when he was little, when he was a boy, but quite a lot of the book talks about her friendship with him. And he was a very good, loyal friend to her right the way through her life. He met her when she was 11 and he was 14. And she did teach him a lot about fossil hunting and where to find things. And he ended up being the president of the Royal Geographic Society, and he tried to get her in, but they weren't having any of it. They weren't going to have women in. They didn't have women in for another 100 years. But when she died, at the end of one of their annual general meeting, he gave a speech about what an amazing woman she was and how she'd found all the great things, and they owed her a debt of gratitude. And it's very hard for us to understand now, but for anybody from the gentry to make a speech like that about a poor woman, literally pretty penniless woman living from the trade of selling fossils and working class and a girl, and actually make a speech about it was really quite something. So he was a great friend. And this is her gravestone, where she's buried with her brother and 3 of her siblings who died when they were babies. And they've cleaned up the gravestone so that you can see it properly. But it's interesting again that Joseph gets top billing because he's a boy, and Mary is added in after. And here's the Lyme Regis Museum, where this is where Mary Anning lived originally. It's on the site of her house. And they've made a special room for her now, which is like an educational room. And I've done talks and things in there. And you can see, it's quite funny. I was amused to see that they've used Mary as the message for mask up. So she's everywhere. And this is a little bit of the pavement outside. And then on the right, you can see the fossil shop. This is a recreation of the fossil shop for the film Ammonite, which comes out in November, which is not really not a film for children, really, but it's nice that they've kept the film set and actually using it as a fossil shop. And although she was acknowledged by the Royal Geological Society and people knew that she was a great fossil hunter, she's never really got the recognition she deserved until very recently. And now the Natural History Museum have got a whole, the Anning rooms where you can see a lot about her life story, see a number of the fossils that she found, and it's really a great visit when we're allowed in the Natural History Museum again. I really recommend that. She would have been absolutely amazed to see that acknowledgement. So I just the last thing before I read a bit was I want to talk a little bit about, I think I'll get rid of that now. Should we de-share that? Stop sharing it, yeah. About why she was called Lightning Mary. If you haven't read the book, maybe you already know. But she was, let's backtrack a bit. Her mum had a lot of babies. She was always having babies, and so she had a lot of work to do looking after these babies who mostly only two of them ever survived, Joseph and Mary. And one day, a circus was coming to, sort of like a circus. People galloping around on horses and showing off and pretending to pick up bits of, spike things on the ground, etc. Anyway, one of the neighbours said, "Tell you what," to Mary's mother, "shall I take Mary up there, up to the field, and she can watch it, and it'll give you a bit of a break." So this is what I imagine happened. See, I don't know. And Elizabeth took Mary up there, and they were suddenly there was a massive storm, and they did what you should never, 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 never do. They went and huddled under a tree. And guess what? The tree was struck by lightning. The three women were killed. The woman, Mary, was thrown clear, and she was unconscious. And so they wondered if they could bring her back to life. And they did something which most people think was, what on earth did you do that for? They put her in a bucket of warm water. And this, I think this is part of a trick. I live on Dartmoor, and there's a story here that if a horse gets stuck in one of the bogs, if you're riding it and it falls into a bog and can't get out, you fill your ride up with water and you tip it in the horse's ear, and the horse is so annoyed, it's like, "Ah, what have you done that for?" It jumps up. And one of the theories is that you put her in a bucket of water and she's going to go, "Oh, don't put me in a bucket of water." And that's exactly what happened. She immediately sort of went and came back. And some people said that's what there was, being struck by lightning, that made her super bright and super focused on finding her fossils. Now, in my book, Mary is not very amused by that. She says, "No, I was born the way I am. I didn't need lightning to make me special." But I imagine that her father, who thought he'd lost her, was so thrilled that she'd survived that was his little nickname for her, Lightning Mary. Again, that's just my imagination. Now, the thing about her is that as I said, she's a feisty little thing, and she's quite rude. And there's a lovely story which I put in the appendix at the back. And one of the things that really drew me to her was that a king was visiting from Europe to come and buy fossils, and obviously he arrived in his carriage, and his flunkies came in before him to warn them that they were going to have a very grand visitor. And I've gone. He waltzes into the shop, and King Frederick Augustus Saxony, and his aide says that the king went in, and this woman standing there, and he said, "I am royalty, and you're very lucky that I am visiting your shop." And he said, "I'm very famous across the whole of Europe." And she said, "Well, I'm very famous too. What do you want, and how much are you going to pay for it?" So basically, everybody's going, "Oh my goodness," off with her head. But she really couldn't be bothered. It's like, "I don't care how grand you are. I know more about this stuff than you do. I've got the goods, you've got the money, let's do business." And I thought that was just fantastic. And she reminded me of some children. Those children who really can't tell a lie? When you have them to tea, and you say, "Oh, are you enjoying that?" And they go, "No, I hate it. It's horrible. It's disgusting." And you think, actually, what you're meant to do is you're meant to say, "Yes, it's lovely. Really, really nice. Thank you very much. But I'm full. I can't eat anymore." Well, Mary would have said, "I don't want to eat this. It's horrible. It makes me feel sick." And as the parent, you'd be going, oh, okay. Sorry about that. So she had no filter. It just came out straight. And that's something I really, really love about her, is that there's no messing around, no dressing anything up. It's just Tell it like it is, and if people don't like it, tough. So I must just say it's really, really weird talking to you guys without being able to see you, but I'm trusting you're out there.
It is very strange. That's one of the best bits that I liked about Mary, because she does speak her mind, and I
Yes.
think she's a bold, brilliant, and truly inspiring heroine. I think people should, not to be rude, but I think you should be able to say. Maybe it's because I'm getting older. Maybe as you get older, you're allowed to say things that that maybe children have to be more careful of.
Yes. Anyway, I'm going to read you a little bit from the book. And this is a chapter called From Mud to Buns. And now she's met Henry and she's become friends with him, which is quite unusual for her because she's not somebody who makes friends very easily. And this is Henry speaking to start off with. Will you look at that blue sky? How blissful this is to be lying in the sun without a care in the world. After all that, she would never stop, and she couldn't because he's or de la Beach. And of course, we were at war with the French at the time, so that was a bit of an insult, really, to call him Frenchy. But she's teasing him. Frenchy was lying on his back on a patch of scrubby grass at the bottom of the undercliff above Monmouth Beach. He was shielding his eyes against the summer sunshine, and he was right. The sky was as blue as it can be, and the sea beneath sparkled and danced. He was a lazy so-and-so some days, and I didn't mind telling him to his face. Some of us, I said crossly between teeth, some of us have work to do. Some of us cannot be lying around staring at the sky. He sat up and pulled some bits of grass out of his hair. He looked sheepish. It's a funny term, that, sheepish. I learned it from Mother. She said father looked sheepish when he'd been out with his friends or his ragtag mob of addle-pated, bottle-headed boobies, as she called them. Not having much time for men who've taken too much drink. Anyway, Henry looked more like a dog that's been caught piddling on a person, and I've seen that. I really have. A fashionable lady got out of her carriage near the Cobb, handed her dog, a pug that could lick its own eyes, its face was so flat and its tongue was so long, to the footman, who set it down on the ground, and it looked up at him, and then, bold as you like, it lifted its leg and passed water all down his shiny polished boots. He never said a thing. He just stood there, red in the face, while the dog suddenly remembered its manners and looked like a dog who's just piddled on a person. Then its rich mistress gathered the dog up and made a huge fuss over it as if it had been clever. I laughed and laughed and got some very angry looks, I can tell you. Anyway, that's how Frenchy looked. And then he smiled. But you love what you're doing, don't you? It's no hardship for you, is it? I growled and started hauling at the huge slab of earth and mud that had toppled down from the cliff top, loosened by a torrential downpour the previous night. It was nearly as big as a bed and as thick as my arm. I could see the gleam of something stuck between the layers, like a flower pressed in the pages of a book. I just needed to get it on its side so I could give it a proper crack with my hammer, but it was stuck in the mud and I couldn't seem to get a proper grip on it. It was a moment for cursing, as my father sometimes did, and I muttered some rude words under my breath, which made me feel better, I must say. Oh, let me do that. Frenchy was up at last and grinning at me like a fool. That looks like it's a bit big for a girlie. Oh, he'd made me well and truly mad with fury by then. So I dug my fingers into the mud and grabbed the biggest handfuls I could. That mud's dirty stuff on a white shirt, I can tell you. Frenchy looked a bit shocked for a moment, and then he was grinning again. Oh, Miss Anning, I mean, Mary, you're so easy to rile, so quick to lose your temper. I was only teasing you. I know how you hate to be called a girl. You call me girly, which is disrespectful. A girl is as good as a boy any day. And if you know I hate it so much, why do you do it? I fumed, dabbling my hands in a pool to wash off the mud. Anyway, I'll just skip a little bit to where she taps it. I brought my hammer down along the seam of the rock, and the whole slab split asunder as if by magic and lay in two pieces like a massive Bible opened at the centre. We peered at the black surface. Many thousands of tiny discs like petals glinted in the sunlight. It was beautiful and worthless. Goodness me! Henry was wide-eyed with wonder, the fool. What are those? They look like stars in the night sky. They're fish scales, you great numbskull. Nothing but fish scales, and look, a few fish bones. I was very disappointed. I'd had a strange feeling in my own bones before I struck that slab, and an even stronger feeling in my stomach, as if I'd swallowed a bee and it was buzzing around in my insides. But this wasn't a find at all. It was absolutely worthless. I'm sorry, Mary. Henry moved to touch me, but I stepped back quickly out of his reach. I expect you thought there might be something big in there, something that would bring in plenty of money. Yes, I had thought that, and I was disappointed. But I was more disappointed that my bones and my stomach had lied to me and let me down. What if I'd lost my magic touch? What if I never found anything valuable again? Don't give up, Mary, he encouraged me. I'll wager you'll find a magic monster one fine day and it'll make you famous and bring you a fortune. And that, I'm going to leave it at that, because that's exactly what does happen. She finds that in my book. What I imagine is actually her brother initially found the skull, and he was all for digging it out and selling it as quickly as possible. And she said, no, 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 no. This is part of something much, much bigger, and I want to find the rest of it. And it took her a year, and she needed lots of help from people to get all the pieces down off the side of the cliff. And she had this amazing kind of mixture of a photographic memory and an ability to visualize things. So she had all these pieces that looked like a jigsaw puzzle, where you've got no picture of what the jigsaw puzzle should look like. And she was able to get them back to her workshop, lay them all out in a tray and piece it all together and work out exactly what the creature would have been like and how it all fitted together. And that was from, every time she found a bit, she could look at it and think, right, I can see that's a bit of that. And she could memorize exactly where it was going to go when she laid it all out. So really phenomenal. Absolutely amazing. She is a very, very clever girl. Yeah. I'm sorry, I've got cat fur all over my keyboard now. So, shall we have some questions? Oh my goodness, I'm going to get asked some technical things like how long does it take for a fossil to form? And that's a lot. Oh gosh, I'm hopeless at the history of this. Very, very long time. Thousands and thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. It comes from layers and layers, and that's why the Jurassic Coast is so good for finding fossils, is that it's on blue lias clay, which basically meant meant layers actually. So things got buried and things got literally like a flower press. A creature would get buried under layers and layers of sedimentary rock and clay. And so then that's why the things sort of fall apart, because it is like the pages of a book. And if you're very lucky, I mean, when people find really big ammonites, they'll find a big lump of rock and they can and if you tap it in the right place, it literally does split apart and bingo, there's your ammonite in the middle of it. I'd love to find, I mean, it would be fantastic to find something big like that. I think a little girl last summer found a huge ammonite, about 3 feet across, which is an incredible find. Most people find little ones or belemnites. So, for example, these little things, I don't know if you can see what this is. I asked children, a lot of children think that these dinosaurs. They're not. They're belemnites, which was a little thing a bit like a squid. But Mary called them to sell them. She knew that they weren't thunderbolts. They were called either ladies' fingers or devil's fingers or lightning bolts that had been petrified in the rock as the lightning hit the rock. And that's how she would sell them. And similarly, these rather ugly things, you see that? She would call those devil's toenails. She said, when the devil want to clip his toes, he goes down on the beach, he clips his toenails and we pick them up. And there's a devil's toenail. It's actually a form of ancient oyster, which I think you can see. But you can imagine all these ladies, twittering ladies, oh, I must have a devil's toenail. I must take it home and show it to people. So, oh, look at this. Look, it's a devil's toenail. It's so exciting. So, and that's how she sold them.
We've got so many questions coming in for you.
I know, right?
It's so exciting. Now then, Olivia said, thanks for finding all this information, bringing it to life and sharing it with us. Olivia has 2 boys, and she says, my boys and I studied Mary Anning in lockdown, and so they'll love hearing all the anecdotes and they will love the book. They'll be at school at the moment. We
Right.
have a message from Andy. Andy Wright said, going back to about telling the truth, Andy Wright said that his daughter did that, telling people what she really thought about the meal when they were at a friend's house, and she went, "Ugh, this is disgusting."
Well, there you are.
I think we've all done that actually. When I was little, I got mumps, and mum and dad had friends visiting. And before they arrived, mum said, "You mustn't tell anybody you've got mumps. Don't tell them you've got mumps. It's a big secret. Don't tell them." And it's the first thing a child does. So they walked in, and I said, "Hello, I haven't got mumps."
Yes.
So now we've got Laura Jade. And she is from Willow Class at Slathwaite C of E. So big shout out to Willow Class at Slathwaite C of E. And they've got a few questions, and they want to know how many fossils are estimated worldwide. What a question,
Oh my
Laura.
goodness. Oh my goodness, that's
My
squillions.
goodness.
I don't think there's
Squillion.
even a number. Squillions. There must.
Oh,
Oh, that yes. I mean, it's because in a way, well, you know that sand is made up of ground up shells and things. So there are masses of probably fossils ground up in every beach, and I mean, who knows how many creatures roamed the earth and got trapped in the layers. I was just going to actually answer the technical question about. So I'm going to read from the technical bit at the back of the book. That blue layers consists of a sequence of limestone and shale layers laid down at the end of the Triassic and the start of the Jurassic period. That's between 195 and 200 million years ago.
wow.
So really, and the thing is that I think the thing we find impossible to understand now, because we don't necessarily think the same way, is that these are people who've been taught that the world was made in 6 days. And that everything had been made at the same time. And the idea that there could be anything that God had made that was regarded as a failure and had been scrapped was unthinkable, because God doesn't make mistakes. So the idea that there would be creatures that no longer exist because they died out was a very, very controversial thing to say and could get you into a lot of trouble. So it was a time when scientists were a little bit careful about what they said, because they would upset people who believed something that was different, and because it conflicted with that view. So she had to be, being a scientist, which is now, an aspirational thing, then was a little bit, it was like, she might just as well have said she was a witch or a magician. So yeah, we need to know that.
I know she got told off, didn't she, for not going to Sunday school?
Yes.
Because she wanted to go out onto Black Ven with her dad.
Yeah.
Right, some more questions. How are fossils made? That was the one you've just answered. So,
Yeah.
why are they often found in sand? Are fossils found in sand?
Well, I think they'll only be found in sand if they've been washed down from a cliff, because they're going to have to be in rock. Obviously, sand itself is, as I say, formed out of the crushed up the sea ground. Is ground stuff into a fine dust. But yeah, no, you'll find that they're preserved in rocks, or obviously there are some fossilized remains or sort of mummified remains that you can find in peat too, preserved.
Yes, that's preserved, isn't it? Now then, here's one. What happens to the skin of dinosaurs? What happened to the skin? If all the bones are there, what happened to the skin?
It rots away. All the soft tissue rots away, and it will have been eaten by all sorts of little things that live off dead things. So the worms get them, I guess.
The worms get them. The worms get a treat. So a question now from Emma Lofthouse Birch, who says, how long does it take for a fossil to form?
Right, so we're saying that these fossils took several hundred million years, a couple of 100 million years.
Couple of hundred.
So a long time. Yeah. So basically, I'm afraid, guys, you cannot make your own fossils. It's not going to happen. Well, you're not going to see the results anyway.
No, we won't be around that long, I don't think.
No.
And Laura's telling us that all the questions are from Willow Class. They're not all just from her. So Laura is the spokesperson for Willow Class.
Right. Okay.
And she's talking about the fossils that are in circles. So
Yes.
why are the ammonites in circles?
Because those were their shells. You know what? It's like I suppose a little bit like a snail or a little bit like a nautilus. Have you seen a nautilus? A squid with that lovely shell on it. So they lived in that. They lived in the shell and all the soft body parts, all the frondy tentacles and everything. They've obviously long gone, and you're just left with the shell, the carapace of the creature, and it would jet along backwards, pushing air out of its as it shoots past you backwards.
Have you ever found? Do you say you'd found just one little bit of fossil? Have you ever found anything? Have you ever had any exciting finds?
No, I'm afraid I'm quite impatient. I went on to Charmouth Beach and I was like, right, come on, guys, where are the fossils? Come on, just hand them over. And didn't really work like that. And when I did find that little sliver, I was like, yes, I found something. And my son looked at me and he was like, yeah, Mum, that's so not exciting. And I said, I'm taking it to the fossil centre and I'm going to show it to them. And they look at it. They looked at me as if to say, oh, bless. Oh yes, the reason these are called ammonites, by the way, are it's from the god, the ancient god Ammon, who was the ram-headed god, and because sometimes they're called ram's horns as well, because you
Yes,
have
that
these
would make
curly sheep.
sense.
Yeah, that's how they got the name ammonite.
That's what they remind me of.
A ram's horn. Yeah. So snake stones, ram's horns. Yeah.
And yet they thought at that time they thought they were devil's toenails, and what was the other one?
Well, these they thought were petrified snakes.
The snakes, that's right.
As in not terrified snakes, but snakes that have been turned into rock.
That had been petrified. And the other one, the angel's wings. The angel's wings, which is what we would call fool's gold.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and there's a bit where Mary finds a lovely bit of fool's gold for her father. And then the belemnite.
Yes, and
the thunderbolts or the devil's fingers or the lady's fingers. Yeah.
And Olivia says she's found loads of those and devil's toenails, but only a couple of ammonites. She says it's great to have the history behind them.
Well, good for you for finding them. You're more patient than me. There's actually a seam of the Jurassic that comes all the way through Yorkshire, and it goes all the way. In fact, an artist friend of mine did a work of art which was all about the Jurassic Trail, and it goes all the way to Nepal. And so she went to the end of the seam of of Jurassic rock that runs all the way through to Nepal.
That would be a fantastic thing to do. Yeah, really exciting.
Yeah, so really exciting.
When I was reading the book, I was actually on the cliff with her. You know the bit where she sees the guys that are trying to get is it a carriage back up off the?
Yes.
What is it that's fallen over the edge?
Yeah, carriage has gone over the edge. Yeah.
Carriage, and then she sees them with the ropes, and they've got all the what's the word? They've got all the full paraphernalia to get it up off the sand, and she thinks, well, if they can draw the carriage back up, then I can go down. And and she goes down onto the. I mean, she was only to be so young and to talk those guys into letting her come back, with them and letting her get down using the ropes and using the mechanism. She goes down, and then she's using her fingers and she's scrabbling to get. And when she finds the head of the ichthys, it's just so amazing. It's really good. You really did bring the story to life.
Oh, thank you. It's very odd. When I wrote it, you'll probably think this is a bit weird, but when I wrote it, I felt like I had Mary with me all the time. It's a very odd feeling. And sometimes I'd write something and she'd say, I'd never say that. And I'm like, oh, sorry. I felt like I was apologizing. All I felt was that I had her in my head. She was living with me. She was with me all the time. She was driving me on. I mean, I started writing it, and then I got distracted and I stopped. And then my son said to me, he said, Mum, what did you do with that book? Did you ever finish it? And I said, no, I didn't really. I don't know what happened. I kind of lost touch with Mary a bit, and then I lost interest. And then he said, I think you should finish it. And I said, well, look, I tell you what, I'll do a deal with you. I'll send the first few chapters to the publisher, and if they like it, then I'll carry on with it. And I sent it to them, and they rang me up and said, oh, we love this. And then they said, when could you finish it? This was in February of 2018. I think it was, 2018. And I said I could have it done by April. And they said, well, April 2019. I said, no, April this year. And they went, oh, okay, great.
Because she got so much of it done.
So I don't know, I'd written very little of it then. So I just really knuckled down, and I was saying to Mary, you've got to be here right now because I've got a gun to my head now and I've got to write this thing. And when I finished it and it was sent off, it was like she just went. And I felt I actually cried my eyes out when I finished because I just felt like my friend had gone. It was really, really weird. Very, very weird.
Well, that does come through in the book. It comes through that you were channeling the character. It's not a made up character, and she's very believable. And the way you write what she would say and what she was doing and the way she sees the world and the lovely relationship that she had with her dad. I was very sad when her dad died.
Yes, my father had just died, and that was quite an important bit for me actually, because I was writing about that too. Yeah. So,
but what turned you onto the subject in the first place? What made you?
I mean, literally, I'm afraid it was a very, very venal and money-based thing, which Mary would have sympathised with. I was in the local bookshop, Serendip, in Lyme Regis, and B, who owns the shop, said, because I was talking about these books like Business Baby and I'm Big Now and Share. This one, Share's done about 1 million in South Korea, or Taiwan. Bizarre. Yeah.
Interesting.
I did get nearly no money for it, but anyway, doesn't matter. Once you sell rights, you don't get much. But anyway, B said to me, "Could you write a book about Mary Anning for a younger age group? So we've got a kind of we've got the Tracy Chevalier book, Remarkable Creatures, which I deliberately didn't read and still haven't read because I didn't want to be influenced by it. And then a friend of mine had written a book called Bone Girl, Stone Girl, Bone Girl, which is a picture book about Mary Anning. And they said they've got nothing for the age group that actually studies it in year 6 in school. So I said, okay, I'll have a look. And that's when I read up a bit about her. And when I found out that she was this feisty little thing, I thought, yeah, that's my girl.
You could identify
She's the toughie. I like her. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was it.
Well, I think that's a really good. I think Mary would have approved of that. I did feel sorry for her to be so poor, and so they were so cold, and just to go out and get a few of these little ammonites and little bits that she could sell on, and felt so cross when she only got 25. Did she get? She get 22. Did she get two shillings and sixpence or something for it?
Yes.
And then it sold for £100, didn't it?
No, she got the skull she got £25 for.
£25.
Which was yes, and then she knew that he was going to sell it on immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, but which is very, very frustrating. But you know what? Somebody said to me, "What would you if you met Mary now? What do you think she would say to you?" And I think she would say, "Where's my card?" It's all about me. She'd say, "It's about me, this book. So it's my book. So I want, I want the royalties."
No, she would be doing right. She certainly would.
Yeah. No, she is quite something. So my message is to everybody really, is that it would have been so easy for her to just give up and slot into the life that was expected of her, and the pressures that were put on her. But she knew what she was meant to be doing, and she stuck to it. And so one of the things I say to all the children watching, if you've got something you're passionate about, try, follow that through. Make sure you do it. I mean, at the age that you're reading this, probably quite a lot of people don't know what they want to be for the rest of their lives. I didn't know what I wanted to be at 10, 11, 12, not even 16 probably. And she's unusual in that respect, is that not many of us find the thing that's going to be our thing forever. But if you're crazy about doing something, just really go for it, because you can waste a lot of time in life doing things that you don't really enjoy. But really, 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 if you're really going to be brilliant at gymnastics, or you're going to be a brilliant painter, or you're going to be, or not even, just as something you really love, or you want to dig around in the ground and find fossils, do it. Go for it.
I think sometimes it's just having confidence to do what you want. Oh, I shouldn't do it for this reason. I shouldn't do it for that. But Mary was so feisty. She was determined. She wanted to be a scientist.
Yeah.
And even when she got the book that she was given, which was really a bit above her reading age, and she didn't really understand a lot of it, she was determined that she was going to carry on and she was going to read that book and she was going to learn more, because she and Henry were going to be scientists.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was fantastic. But the books that you've written up until then were for younger children. The ones that you just held up there were the ones for younger children. Yeah.
Well, this
so
one
we've
was
got
the first.
Yes.
This one was the first, and I'm the eldest of 6.
Uh-huh.
So I'm used to sharing absolutely everything, right? Because you do, don't you? You can't keep stuff to yourself. So this was a story about a little girl who's being asked to share stuff with her baby brother, and she's like, "Oh God, do I have to?" And eventually she gets the hang of it, and she quite likes it, and it's quite a sweet little story, and that sold all over the world, and it's been translated into lots of different languages, and it first came out in 2010, and I still get royalties from it. It's really nice. It's still selling.
It's a good subject, because if a child's first born and they then get used to just having mum and dad all to themselves, and then another child comes along, so storybooks like that, picture books like that, are really good for children to come to terms with how their lives are going to change. And I know that a lot of the picture books that are in our libraries are to help children understand new situations and to help parents explain them. So books like that are very valuable, easily to understand, and make children feel a bit more normal, understand things a bit better. So I think they're really valuable. And then this Lightning Mary is about fossils and the Jurassic Coast. But you have a new one, I'm told.
I do. I've just been finalising the cover, actually, which is very exciting. And it goes to press to actually be printed on Friday, and comes out in April next year. And it's about 2 young climate change activists. And the heroine is a girl called Zainab, and she's from Somaliland, which is a country that isn't recognised as even existing. Although it used to be a British protectorate. Anyway, she's in Devon, set on Dartmoor, and she and a boy called Lucas, who's quite shy, they become friends. They start the Fridays for Future campaign, and then they get really involved. Then they uncover a real scandal about a fossil fuel company that's going to be doing things in her country, and it gets pretty exciting. I hope everybody enjoys it. And it's about, I'm very interested by people who are driven and passionate and motivated, and Zainab and Lucas are really good. They're really good characters, I think. I hope people really like them.
As you are yourself, I think you come across as a very driven person, someone who wants to make a difference.
Well, I don't hang about. I try not to.
We haven't got the title, Anthea. What is the title of your new book?
It's called Burning Sunlight.
Burning Sunlight, and that comes out in April of 21. April 21. So that's something else to look forward to.
Yeah.
And then what else? What does the future hold?
Well, I'm going to be talking with my editor about what we do next. I think they'd quite like another historical one, which is interesting, because that's, I don't know. I quite like to do a fantasy thing, and I did start a book called After the Water Wars, which was set in a dystopian future. I started this in about the mid-2000s, and then I did that stupid thing where I was typing and suddenly it vanished off the screen.
Oh no.
And it had gone. I mean gone. No. And I'd written quite a lot of it. I was so upset. I wanted to throw the computer out of the window. My son Henry was about 9 at the time, and he heard me scream my head off, and he came running up into my studio and said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Oh, the whole book's gone." And he said, "Don't be silly, you'll be able to get it back." 9, very calm scientist, very calm boy. He sort of searched, and then he said, "No, actually, you have actually totally deleted it." So
you couldn't find it at all. Oh no. You
absolutely gone.
Couldn't send your computer back in time and find it.
No. But I quite like to go back to that. I quite like to go back to it at some point, because I think it was quite a good story. But we'll see.
We'll look forward to that one.
Yeah,
that sounds really exciting.
I wonder if there are any children out there who are writers.
I don't know if we've still got our chat open. So if you're there in school, or if you're watching this wherever you're watching it from, have we got any budding writers out there? Let's see if we can get anybody to come in and say what they'd like to write about.
Actually, it's quite a good story about this, because I went. I read English at university, and everybody thought I was going to be a writer. And then I went into the city and didn't do any of that. And then eventually, I thought, actually, this is what I'm meant to be doing, and I better get my head down and do it. And I wrote this in 20 minutes, I think, as an exercise. We were given an exercise to do. I went on a course with a great guy called Malachy Doyle, absolutely fantastic teacher, and who's written hundreds of picture books. And I sent it off to for Anderson, because they were the first on the list of people who take a manuscript without having an agent. Most people have a literary agent. Mm-hmm. So I sent it to them, and about a month later, my son had listened to the answer machine. He said, Mum, quick, there's a message on the answer machine. And it was somebody saying, we want to publish it, from Anderson. I was like, what? Really? So that was it. I was so lucky, because that doesn't happen very often. It is quite hard. I mean, you probably heard about, how many times J.K. Rowling was rejected. In fact, a friend of mine was one of the people who read the book at Bloomsbury. But I was incredibly lucky. It is quite hard to break in. But if you get a publisher like Anderson, who are part of Penguin Random House, they really look after you. And this has been in print all the time since I wrote it. It's just, they've never taken it off the shelves. So it's really good. But it's very hard to make money.
Something else that you have in common then with Mary. You were both lucky. Yes, she had that little voice in her head telling her where to go and where she would find things.
Oh, and can I tell you one last thing? One of the fantastic things about libraries
is that authors, we have to do the challenge.
Yes, absolutely the challenge. But authors get money from you borrowing their books. It's fantastic. Public lending right. It's a wonderful thing. Please carry on borrowing. Use your library.
I've just gone back to my notes and it says challenge. Anthea, what is this week's challenge?
The challenge for you guys out there. The challenge is, imagine you can create, we said you can't create your own fossil because you haven't got time. But before next week, could you invent a prehistoric monster? And could you either make a model of it, of the fossil of it, or a drawing of the fossil of it, or make a clay or a cast of it, and take a picture of it and give it a name and send it in to the library, and let's see if we can't arrange for there to be a nice, can we arrange a nice little prize? Come here.
We are going to have a prize. Yes, there you are. That's where you've got to send it to. You've got to send them to lal@kirklees.gov.uk. So it can be a picture, it can be a model, it can be papier-mâché, anything that you want to create a model. This is something that you think may have lived. Give it a backstory. Think about where it lived. Think about what it was called
and what it ate.
What it ate, yep. Where it lived, whether it was at the sea or in the sky or on land, because fossils come from all the dinosaurs that were on all three. Yep. And then we need you to send them into the website, into the email. That's right. And then I've just seen the time. We've got to hand them into the email, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at them. There will be a prize for the best one. So it can be either that your class is going to do this, the whole class can send them in, or if you're not in school today, if you're not in a class, then just send it in as an independent entry, send them into the email address, and those will be showcased on our website.
Fantastic. And I'll look forward to seeing those.
And this is the website where you will find them. Now, next week, we want you to log on, tune in, and space out for the special poetry edition of Library Adventures Live. We're all super excited to be welcoming the entertaining local poet, writer, and storyteller Conrad Burdekin, plus the fantastic poet laureate to the moon, somebody called Don Conlon, poet laureate to the moon. So together they'll be talking about why they love poetry. They'll be performing some of their poems and showing how easy it is to write your own poems. So next week's is all poetry. In the meantime, don't forget to send in your prehistoric creatures. Now, a huge thank you to Anthea. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming along today. Thank you. Thank you to Karamak, who was waving his polydactyl paws. And also thank you to you, because I hope you've enjoyed everything this morning as much as I have. But a big thank you to everybody who's watching, because it's no fun if you don't have an audience. So children, what we need you to do is tell your parents about Lal, tell your parents about what you've seen today and what we're doing. And then parents and teachers out there, we need you to tell your friends about what we're doing, because this is such a fantastic thing and we've got so many wonderful things coming up. Go to the website, click on children and young people, have a look and find out who's coming up next week, the week after. We've got programs now right through till next year. So it's not just for lockdown, it's for every child. For the long term, and the motto of our team is we don't want any child left behind. So Anthea, thank you so very, very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Loved it.
Thank you.
Love seeing you all, or not seeing you, but
and until next time on Library Adventures Live, bye for now. Thank you.
Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.